So what are we? Nun Hey Amud Beis, I think. Yeah. It's not going well. What do we have to do here? Why is that? It's interesting. Okay. Nun Hey Amud Beis. And the Mishnah continues with what is included in different terms. Mishnah. No dem in Aksus. Somebody made a neder not to benefit from Aksus. Aksus means clothing. What's included in clothing? This again has to do with time and place. And today also we would ask what's included in clothing. These things are not considered clothing. Sak is sackcloth. Yiriyah is also some kind of a piece of material. And chamila might be something what we call today something like a poncho, something like that. That's not. It maybe depends nowadays. Also, maybe things change, but it would be some kind of a curtain, a piece of material, or something like that he's wrapping himself with. Is that considered clothing? So the Mishnah says that these things are not included. Next case, Omar Konim Tzemer Ola Olai. If he said that I'm prohibiting upon myself that tzemer, wool, should come upon me. Mutter l'skasos begizei tzemer. Gizei tzemer are not included. Gizei tzemer means wads of wool. Here the point is not if he's wearing it or covering himself with it, but gizei tzemer is not included in tzemer. When he said tzemer, it's obvious, it's understood from his neder that he meant to say clothing, bigdei tzemer, woolen clothing. But if he has wads of wool, that's not the point. He'd be able to put wads of wool on top of him. That's not what he meant. And also if he says pishtan, konam pishtan ola olai. Also mutelas kasos banitze pishtan, he'd be allowed to use anitze. Anitze pishtan means also in the process of making the flax into linen clothing. So there's a process how you take the plant and you bang it and soak it until you take the fibers and then make linen. So it's not saying pishtan. Pishtan alone, even though the word pishtan does mean the flax plant, but that's not what he meant. From the context of what he meant big day pishtan. So both by tzemer and it's the same thing. Tzemer and pishtan, both of them meant clothing made out of wool, clothing made out of pishtan, linen, but not the actual wool for itself or the pishtan, the flax plant. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, I call it note there that you can tell also from the circumstance of what he meant, from the circumstance that he was talking about, what was meant. And he gives an example. Sometimes when he says tzemer or pishtan, he does mean the flax or the wads of wool. Sometimes, what does it mean? He was schlepping. He was carrying a load of wool or a load of flax, and he said, and he says he perspired, and he had bad odor because of that, and he said, "That's it, no more." That I'm making an edit, that I'm mastering, that put on myself anymore wool or linen. Over there, he didn't mean to wear wool and linen. He meant to carry, because that was the context of what he was talking about. Over there, it's going to be the opposite. Over there, it's going to be that he's allowed to wear woolen clothing, but he's also to carry on his back wool, woolen wads. So it could be the Rabbanan agreed, and we do pass like Rabbi Yehuda. I don't think the Gemara is going to talk about a machlokes. We do pass like Rabbi Yehuda. That's what Rabbi Avram was asking the whole time, the whole Masechta, that look into the circumstances of what he meant. So here it does say that you go according to the circumstances, and you have to apply this to the whole Masechta whenever you can tell by the circumstances what he meant. So you do take that into consideration. So again, what did the Mishnah say? Just to sum up the Mishnah, first he said that ksus means whatever is called clothing, and some things are not referred to as clothing, even though people might wear it, but it's not called. That's not what people call clothing. We see some more examples in the Gemara. Then it said about wool and linen. So again, with the Tanna Kamma says that it doesn't include wads of wool. It doesn't include the plant of pishtan. It means clothing, big day tzemer, big day pishtan. And Rabbi Yehuda says it depends on the circumstance. Sometimes from the scenario, you can tell that's what he meant. If he was carrying loads of flax plants or loads of wads of wool, and he said, that's it, I don't want it anymore, because he was perspiring. So it's nothing to do with big day tzemer, big day pishtan, it has to do with carrying a load. So over there, under that circumstance, when he said, I'm making a neder not to do it anymore, so that not to benefit when in that under that circumstance, so that would mean dafka carrying a load and not wearing. So, and that's what Tana Shulchan Aruch, that's why he passes like Rabbi Yehuda.
What's that? I need to say.
That's the plant. Rashi brings down that Gemara and Sukkah talks about the different stages of the process of making flax into a garment. So they first pound it, dayik nufitz, and then you comb it. There's tari dayik nufitz. There's one stage of soaking it, and the words they use in English is something about the redding, R-E-T-T. I don't know the fancy words that they use. One is to soak it, one is to pound it, and one is to comb it. So Rashi says this is called dayik v'lo nufitz. This is when it's already pounded and not yet combed. But the point is that it's not yet a beged. It's not yet a garment.
Hard to carry. Is that what it is?
No, that's not the point. The point is that what he says that when he's talking about clothing, then he means clothing of pishtan, not the plant of pishtan. And when he's carrying a sack of of this plant, and he says that's it. I don't want to. I'm getting perspired from it, and it makes me a bad odor. So then he means the plant, and he doesn't mean the clothing. Everything according to the circumstance. Tanya, Anoda min aksus. Again, same thing case as the Mishnah. When he says ksus, what does he mean? So first it starts off the same as the Mishnah. Muter besaku v'yiriya v'chamila. That's all the same thing as the Mishnah said. The sackcloth, yiriya is also some kind of a piece of material. Chamila, they say again, it might be something. The way they describe it, it sounds something like a poncho that we say that maybe he puts his head into it. I'm not sure, but it's a piece of material that has fringes at the end. They're very coarse. They say that the urea is also a coarse material, and it's not usually used as clothing.
I mean, urea we know as the covers of the
that happens to be urea. Urea means a piece of material. It's called the urea. So it's not usually used as clothing. It's not referred to as clothing. That's why if he says ksus, he doesn't usually mean that. That has to do with lashon b'nei adam, and I'd imagine today also will be the same subject of what people consider clothing. B'punda, b'psikya, b'skortia, b'katavlia, b'anpilia, uplinia, b'chasayim, b'kova. That clothing does include all of these things. So this might be some kind of a belt. The punda is some kind of a belt. Usually it's brought down as a money belt. Nowadays we have the money belt is like a pouch on its own. They used to have some kind of a hollow belt that they would put money into, but it was worn as a belt, so it is considered clothing because that's how people refer to it. When they say clothing, they'll refer to that belt also. Psikya is some kind of a garter that he puts around his socks or legs, and that's also considered part of clothing. The word clothing includes that also. You go to a clothing store, you can ask for a punda for psikya. Skortia, the Gemara is going to talk about a skortia soon.
Not anymore.
No?
I mean, you couldn't ask for a garter for your socks.
Okay, they don't have that in any kind of store. But it means whatever, some kind of a belt. You can go to ask for a belt in a clothing store.
Yeah.
A skortia, the Gemara is going to talk about that soon. Katavliya, they say it's made out of leather. But again, some kind of a leather that would be considered clothing. You'd get it in the clothing store. I'm not translating exactly. I don't know. The Mefarshim also say in general. Anpilia, they say it's socks. Polinia is some kind of knickers. And Mechlasayim is pants, but of course it doesn't mean regular pants. Regular pants by us would surely be considered clothing. So it's something that might be also considered an undergarment, and that's considered chiddush. That's also considered ksus. When people say clothing, they include that also. Kova, yeah, that's interesting. If you call that clothing, if you go to a clothing store, you ask him if he has a hat. Will he look at you like, where did you come from? Don't you see it says clothing store? Or he says, yes, we have hats. Is that the clothing store?
Well, today, and you go to
Yeah, but-
a lot of the stores have hats.
So the question is, what a clothing store? Does a clothing store have hats?
Yeah.
Women's
And then it
clothing.
becomes-
For men, it's also.
You go to Fox, you go to.
You go to a clothing store, doesn't it? Okay, no, that's like,
That's on the side.
that's called like full dress. But if you have a clothing store in the Lower East Side, and then a clothing store, what do they include? Okay, but everything depends on time and place. Shoes, you go to a clothing store, you ask if he has shoes. He says, does it say shoes outside? It says clothing. And that's the question. It doesn't include clothing.
It probably depends on the place.
Yeah, everything depends on the time and place. Okay. So here it says that a kova is included. Maybe it depends what kind of a hat also. Good.
Right, exactly.
What kind of a hat? Okay, anyway, that's the brisa that it tells in the word ksus, clothing, what's included. First it says 3 things are not included, then it has a long list of things that are included. And again, it depends on the time and place. My iskorti, that's this word here, the skortia. So it says that is also included. It's also what's a skortia? Kituna de tzala. Tzala means leather. Tzadi means leather. Kituna is a tunic, some kind of a clothing made out of leather, and also it is considered clothing. Tanya, this is interesting. that has nothing to do with our subject. Might put it even in parentheses that it has to do with Hilchos Shabbos. And l'chora doesn't have anything to do with our subject because halachically what's considered wearing, it's just going to be now what are you allowed to put on yourself is on Shabbos, and it's not considered carrying, it's considered wearing. The subject comes up by us. Just the extreme case where it comes up is when it's raining and people want to take a plastic tablecloth and open it up and use it as a raincoat, but it's not a raincoat. It's just a tablecloth, a piece of plastic. Is that allowed to do that on Shabbos, to walk in the street and play Rosh Hashanah? Is that called that you're carrying? Is it called wearing or carrying? And let's give you an example of what people might do today. So here it talks about what's considered clothing and not, and this has to do with Hilchos Shabbos. It doesn't have to do with our subject. And usually the Gemara would ask a kasha, the contradiction between the Nedarim and Shabbos. I was going to say no shaykhs. One's lashon b'nei adam. We're just talking about by our subject. It only depends how people talk. It doesn't make a difference if halachically it's considered wearing or carrying. But the Gemara doesn't even compare the two. The Gemara just brings it down. Din and Hilchos Shabbos. So it's a related topic, but it's not the same topic. And the Gemara doesn't see difficult about it. Difficulty. Tanya says in a Brisa,
You can't even on Shabbos. You can't even take, let's say, your coat and just put it all over your head, not wearing it, and just leave it like that and walking on Shabbos. That's also considered carrying. No?
Why is it? You're saying it's considered carrying because you're carrying it?
Yeah, because you're not wearing it.
Okay, but
It's
talk
over your
about
head.
so wrap yourself around it. Wrap yourself with it. He wants to take the tablecloth. He has a hush of a hat, hush of a suit, everything.
Right.
He wants to take a tablecloth, wrap himself with it,
Right.
and walk home. It's
Yeah,
really
well,
Rosh Hashanah. So it might not be considered. Probably it's not allowed because it's not considered wearing. It's considered covering. But it's covering yourself with it. You're not. No one's going to say you're wearing it. If you have a raincoat that's made out of plastic, even if they have a disposable one that's a one time, okay, but it's called some kind of wearing. But this is not called wearing. It's probably it's also. We'll see soon.
Another example, if someone forgot to bring the coat, or they lost the coat and they want to use their blanket to go outside, would that on a cold day?
The same question. Is that called wearing? Yeah, okay. So here's the Brisa. Tanya Yotzin V'Sak. Here's talking about Hilchos Shabbos, nothing to do with the Nedarim. Yotzin V'Sak Over, or V'Skus Over, or Yiri, or V'Chamil, or V'Knei Aksham. Here it says it is mutter to go out with the sack, the thick sack that's usually not worn. And I think the Brisa is going to say soon why it's mutter because it is sometimes worn. The Segus Over is also some kind of a thick material. I don't know. Yiriya, we said again, that's some kind of piece of material. Chamila. All these words, the Rishonim themselves, they say Mine Begodim, even Artscroll just transliterated it. They didn't say any kind of translation because we don't know exactly what it is. And because of the rain. It means that here's a case, he's going out in the rain and he's taking this clothing. And it is sometimes worn. That's why it's mutter to wear it on Shabbos. Avalo b'teva, can't put a box. He wants to go out and cover himself in the rain. To protect himself, he takes a box of a kupa, also different kind of boxes. That's not called wearing, that's called carrying. Even if he's going to let go, no hands, just put it on his head. That's called carrying. Also not a mat, to take a mat and put it over him in order for the rain, because that's not called wearing, that's called carrying. Harom, Yosef, Besakim, shepherds, they do wear, and they're allowed to go out on Shabbos with a sackcloth. And the Mishnah, the Brisa said that before. Yotzin b'sak aved said that's mutter, and now it's saying why it's mutter because the shepherds wear that. Not only shepherds are allowed to wear that on Shabbos, everyone's allowed to. The reason why they say shepherds is because they're the ones who usually do. So because some people do wear it as clothing, they do wear it. So that's why everyone's allowed to wear it. It's considered clothing. That's the end of the Brisa that it was talking about Hilchos Shabbos. L'chorah no shaykhs to us because the Nedarim would depend on how people refer to it and the spoken word, when they call that clothing or not. So it's nice that the Gemara brought it down, but it's not our subject. What?
Some kind of proof. These are, even though it's Hilchos Shabbos, that I'm wearing them as clothes, therefore they are clothes.
So it depends on people. I think that it wouldn't be the kasha or teres because it's lashon any other, whatever people call clothing. It doesn't make a difference if it's halachically. Maybe you want to say over there. It also depends on how people refer to it. They refer to it as the way when they say the word. It could be that they do wear it, but it's not the word clothing. You wouldn't call it clothing. It could be Mahalik. You want to say that it is related because the reason why you're allowed to wear it. Why is it called wearing on Shabbos? Because people look at it as wearing. They look at it like clothing. They don't look at it like you're just carrying it by putting it over your clothing. Okay, that's the halacha. That's the brisa that elaborated a little bit more than the Mishnah what the word ksus means. Agav brought also the halachas of Shabbos. In Shabbos, that's what it says. Whatever is considered something that people do sometimes wear, so it's mutter on Shabbos for the rain. But if they never wear it, then it's not called wearing, even if it's putting on top of your head, and you don't have to hold on to it. It's still considered carrying and not wearing. The Mishnah here they bring down this Ran over here, the Ran, when it says here sak, but he says below sak mamish, elo kain sak. It means sackcloth, but it doesn't mean a sack. Mamish, take a sack. That's you put potatoes in a real sack, and you just made a hole in it the way that you're going to put it over you. Is that also included when it says that people wear a sack? So the Ran seems to say not. The Mishnah brings down this Ran, or Rashi and Tosfos brings down others that say the same thing, that it's not mutter to take a regular real sack, only sackcloth, but not a sack. And he brings down a Shulchan Kiborm that says openly that the world said he learned the word sack. Sack means imamish a sack. So he seems to make a machlokas, rishonim or achronim out of it. And he says maybe he leaves it out tzarachian. What's the lach taking mamish a sack? Does our halacha include mamish a sack or only sackcloth? But it's something which is usually worn by the shepherds, and they don't ever wear a sack mamish.
If I said the examples that the price brought, which are mutter, are all soft and pliable, and the examples which are also all hard.
It's not soft. It's going to be aveh. It's going to be what we call pliable. It's still, and the other ones machzelas. Machzelas also might be. You say machzelas. You have machzelas raka sometimes.
Yeah, but it's not like a cloth. You can wrap it. You may be able to roll it. Yeah.
But I think you would also agree that if it's something that people don't wear, even if it's going to be made out of rubber or something like that, pliable rubber, if people never wear it, so then it's not. So the koveh is still going to be, even though the examples given here as if it's pliable or not, but the koveh is going to be what people consider wearing, or they consider it just carrying. If you take a tablecloth, and people would not say you're wearing it, they're going to say that you're carrying it, covering yourself with it in order to protect from the rain, not that you're wearing it. They don't consider it wearing it. So that's the koveh. And by our discussion, maybe it's like kind of want to say there is a relationship between what people consider wearing by Shabbos and what they would call clothing. But Nedarim has to do what people call clothing. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. So we said that Rabbi Yehuda says you take the circumstances into consideration, and you could tell what he meant. Did he meant clothing, or did he mean a package of wads of wool that he's not going to carry? So we pass like Rabbi Yehuda, and here's an example. The Bryce elaborates a little bit more. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Kolofi Anoda. What does he mean to say? The Mishnah itself explained how you love semer. If he was wearing clothing, he was wearing woolen clothing, and it was bothering him. Why was it bothering him? It doesn't say. Maybe the case is that there was a rough on his body, the skin. Maybe that's the reason why he didn't like it, or some problem because of the clothing of the wool was bothering him. And he said, "Konim semer ola." He made a neder about semer. Then he meant clothing. Also, little bush and mutter little. Then it'd be mutter to wear it, and also to carry it as a load, because from the context of what he was talking about, he meant wearing it. But the opposite, if he was carrying a load of pishtan and he's perspired, and the Mishnah says they got a bad odor from the perspiration, and that's why he said, I'm asking pishtan to come on me. Over there he means carrying, and it does not mean wearing. With a little bush wasaliton. So you take everything according to the context of what he was saying, and if he's talking about clothing, he means clothing. If he's talking about carrying, so he means carrying, and that's why Paskin like that. You always take into consideration also from the scenario that he was talking about. On top of Nun Vav. I know the men of bias. Someone made a essay about a house. What does bias mean? Bias, house. Mutabalia, Ray says it doesn't include the attic. The bias only includes the bottom floor, it doesn't include the top floor. We call it an attic. Aliyah sometimes think more doesn't mean an attic, only means the second floor. But everything again depends on the time and place. What does the word bias refer to? So May says the word bias only refers to the bottom floor, it doesn't refer to the top floor. So if someone made the neder, I'm not gonna whatever eat or enter, whatever it is, in a bias, so the bias means only the bottom floor, he'd be allowed to go to the next floor. The bias, they say no, that the word bias includes an aliyah also. Aliyah is included. When you say bias, you mean the bias or the aliyah. But I know them in aliyah, mutab bias. If someone said, but we call an attic, surely an attic does not include a house. If you say attic, it means dafka attic. The word house might include also an attic. But an attic, the word attic is limited only to an attic and not to a bias.
If we're going according to what people mean, then I don't understand the machlokas between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim.
So sometimes the Gemara will say there's no machlokas, and it depends on where you come from. That's what we had sometimes before. If there's a machlokas, then it's going to be. We had one case recently that there was room for a machlokas. That's something which is in between. That means that Gemara said if you spoke about vegetables and then you only had Oh, a bus,
So
these
maybe
kind of
an
things.
attic,
It may be something, if someone's at a house, would he, I'm not saying it's the same, I'm not saying that the more did find
How much
sometimes
they use it or how easy it is to get to
there's
the.
something in between that
Yeah.
maybe is questionable, but I don't know. Maybe we'll say, okay, I don't know what to say. It's a nice question that was
I mean, there are places, there are some houses where,
some
it's
places,
covered where you have to pull down a staircase.
if they're talking
And so
about
then
different
it's like
kinds,
something that you don't really use unless you pull down the staircase.
but then they'll be saying, wouldn't it be a machlokes still? Is there, if they're talking about two different cases, then it's not a machlokes further. Further, it's not going to be a machlokes. They're obviously talking about the
Yeah.
same case. They
Yeah,
want the
yeah.
same case.
Yeah.
Is it the same place? So I don't know an answer.
Okay.
How's it trying to have machlokes or how people talk? Yeah, unless you say something in between,
Okay, so
borderline.
it's not Pasha that it's Machlokes.
The Gemara is going to
we
make a
don't-
machlokes out of it, so I don't know what to say.
Okay,
Sometimes the Gemara says no machlokes, Marki Asri, each one's talking in his own place. Here the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara does seem to make a machlokes, and here it doesn't explain what the machlokes is. The Gemara says, "Man tana beveis." It says over there by Nigam, it says beveis eretz achuz aschem. Talks about nigei abatim, that the nega comes on a house. So when it describes it, it introduces the subject. It says if you can have a nega beveis eretz achuz aschem, and it seems to be an extra base. It could have said beis eretz achuz aschem. Beveis l'rabo says hayetzia. Beveis l'rabo says aliyah. It has an extra base to be marba, to include more things than the word bais alone would have meant. And it comes to add a yetzia and an aliyah. Yetzia usually means like a shed or maybe a side room that's attached to the house. And that's also included in the nega comes down to yetzia is also considered a nege batin. And also the rabbi says aliyah, which is the second floor, attic. So what's the Mars kasha? That it seems to say that the word bais would not include an aliyah. You need a special riboy in the pasuk to tell you that the word bais in the Torah means also the aliyah. Amrav Chisda Rab Meir. It must be this Bryce only goes according to Rab Meir that the word bias does not include the aliyah. The Rabbanan, Amri Rabbanan, aliyah b'chal bias. Lamalikra, the bias, the ribuye. Rav Chisda says you wouldn't need the pasuk to be marba base, an extra base to tell you that even an aliyah, because Rabbanan say that the word bias includes an aliyah. So l'chora, the simple answer would be that it nothing to do with the Torah. This has to do with Lashon B'nai Adam. That our mission is talking about how people talk. And the Gemara said if a couple of times there's no kasha from Sukkim to Nedarim. But the Gemara seems to try again and again that maybe it has to make it aligned with what the Torah says. But the Gemara could have said that is not connected. So the kasha is that in our mission it's machokis if the word bias includes an aliyah, and in this brisa it says you need a special pasuk to be marba an aliyah by Negon. That means the word bias alone would not have meant an aliyah. It sounds like Reb Meir. That was Rav Chisda.
I didn't understand that. I thought Rebbe Hista said that he's saying it's Rebbe Meir.
Only Reb Meir. Can't be Rabbanan. The brisa
But
that says
if it's adding the shed and the aliyah,
that means that the word bais alone would not have meant an aliyah. You have to have the extra base to be marba. The word bais, if it would have said bais alone, would not have included aliyah. You have to have a special process.
It's
Big
base
base.
alone.
The base, there's a riboy over here. There's an extra letter as that's to include more.
I see.
And the word alone bias would not have included an aliyah. The Rabbanan say that it does. So you wouldn't need a special pasuk. Means I would have known on my own that the nega applies to the attic because it says house, and house includes the attic. That was Rav Chisda. Even according to Rabbanan that say that the word bias includes an aliyah, you still do need a pasuk to say that the halachas of negam apply to the aliyah also. It's not it doesn't just say bias. It says which means it's a house in the land of your inheritance. But you might have taken it literally. You might have darshan that it has to be something which is connected to the ground. That you might have thought that since it says we're going to darshan only if it's connected to the eretz. A house of the eretz means that it's on the bottom floor that's connected to the ground. But aliyah, even though it is called a bias, but it's not called a base eretz. It's not called the house that's in the land. So that's why even the Rabbanan have to have a special pasuk to say that our attic is also included in halachas of negoim. Again, the Gemara, there's machlokas vayos if the word bias includes an aliyah or not, and we're not differentiating between the dorm and the lashon of Torah. So by negoim, why do you need a special pasuk to tell you that even an aliyah could get a nega? If it says bias, it might mean that. So Rabbi says bias does not mean that. Rabbanan say even though bias does mean that, does mean also an aliyah, but since it says base eretz achuz aschem, you might have made a mistake. You might have misunderstood the Torah that it means only a house which is connected to the ground. That doesn't mean to say that. That's why I have to tell you extra base to tell you even an aliyah is also could get a nega. New Gemara. Keman azla ha de amar Rav Huna bar Chiya mishmei de Ula. According to which opinion was Ula speaking when he said the following? Ba'is b'veisi ani mochalach. This has nothing to do with Nedarim, it has to do with sales. A person sells a house and he said, I'm selling you a house in my house. Ba'is b'veisi ani mochalach. I'm selling you a house of my houses, in my house. So the halacha is Mareyu Aliyah. That's what he told him. I'm selling you Ba'is b'veisi.
Mhm.
So the halacha is Mareyu Aliyah. Simple shot means he could show him the Aliyah. This is what I sold you. It means they made a deal without specifying which house he's going to sell to him. And they made a contract and everything, made a kinyan, everything sold. Then he says, okay, I want to see my new sale, purchase. So he texts him to the Aliyah. This is what I sold you. He says, this is what you sold me? He said a bias. He says, this is called a bias bevesi. So Ula said that if he said bias bevesi, he could show him the Aliyah as being the purchase. And the Gemara is medayik from Ula. Time with Amalei bias bevesi, ani mochalacha, avo bias tam, inam Aliyah. What if he just would have said bias ani mochalach? This is a fancy case. He said bias bevesi. You could say bias bevesi means we would say like a room in a house within the house. That means that there's a house, and inside the house there's another room. There's rooms inside the house. I'm telling you a house within the house. Then he could say that I meant Aliyah. But what if he just would have said bias ani mochalacha? I'm selling you a house, and they made a contract transaction. Then they go to see. He shows him the Aliyah. Aliyah, I wanted to buy the bottom floor. So he says no, that the bias includes Aliyah. It doesn't seem like that because the only case that Ula said that he could say Daliyah is when he said Ba'is Bevesi. But if he would have just said Ba'is Ani Mochalacha, mashma he can't sell Daliyah. That was Ula's din. And the Gemara thinks it only goes according to Rav Meir. Rav Meir, because according to Rabbanan, when you say Ba'is, it does include Daliyah. That's the Gemara's kasha. Not a kasha, but the Gemara thinks that not a kasha on Ula. So saying that Ula seems to be like Rabbi Meir, that the word Ba'is does not include Aliyah. The Gemara is not differentiating here because here the does go also Lashon B'nei Adam. Sales that also has to do with how people talk. So Nedarim and sales language should be the same thing. And by our Mishnah it says Machlokas Rav Meir and Rabbanan, if the word bias includes Aliyah, Ula seems to imply, he didn't say, he seems to imply that the word bias would not include an Aliyah because he didn't say simple bias ani mochalacha. He could say I meant Aliyah. So that seems to be like a Meir. The Gemara answers Afilu Teim Rabbanan, my Aliyah Ula Shebabatim. So the Gemara makes Mamish Mapecha. Mamish changes everything upside down. We take Ula's words. Let's just highlight Ula's words to see what he said. Ula said, the halacha is Mareyu Aliyah. What does Mareyu Aliyah mean? Just the psak was that this was the psak. The case Mareyu, he chose him. What I mean, this is what I meant to sell. This is the purchase he just bought. And the Gemara says, according to Rabbanan, even if he would have said Ba'is ani mochalacha, also he could show him the Aliyah, because they say Ba'is includes Aliyah. So the Gemara mamish makes a mapecha that if you would have said Ba'is ani mochalacha, you could show him the Aliyah, like the Rabbanan. Here it means to say that if you said Ba'is bevesi, you cannot give him the Aliyah. It says Mareyu Aliyah, which we translated, it means he shows him the top floor and says this is what he just bought. Now the Gemara is saying it doesn't mean that. But Ula meant the opposite. He meant you have to show him the best. Ba'is bevesi, now it's like when you say something, I'm giving you a house, I'm giving you something, the best of the best. When you said I'm selling you something, I'm selling you a car, this car is a car is a car. So he says Ba'is bevesi, it doesn't mean to say like a house of houses, the best house of my house. So then he can't give him the Aliyah because Aliyah is not considered as good as the Ba'is. The ground floor is considered better than the top floor. You have to go up, you have to go down. The bottom floor is considered a better quality house. So it means very much the opposite of what we thought till now. Till now we thought that Mareyu Aliyah means he shows him the top floor. That's what I just sold you. Now we're saying Mareyu Aliyah means he has to show him the best. And it comes out, according to the new reading, that Ula meant to say, if you would have said Stam Ba'is ani mochalacha, then the Aliyah is included, like the Rabbanan of Rav Meir. But if you said Ba'is bevesi, then you have to give him the best. And the best is not the top floor. Stam house does include the top floor. But if you say Ba'is bevesi, then it means even the best of the house. Then you can't give him the top floor, then you have to give him the bottom floor. Very amazing how the Gemara changes around the Ula to mean the opposite of what was the simple reading.
Well, so why would that be the Rabbanan then?
The Rabbanan say that a house does include the Aliyah. So even
but the Aliyah is not the best.
Right. So if they would say Ba'is ani,
agree that
they would say Ba'is ani mochalacha, you could give him the Aliyah. What's it then? Someone says Ba'is ani mochalacha, and then he wants to give him the Aliyah. They go to Bezdin. He said he's going to sell me a house, and then he gives me the Aliyah. The other one says the house is an Aliyah. So Meir would paskin that cannot give him the Aliyah. The Rabbanan would paskin he could give him the Aliyah. That's not, and we pass like the Rabbanan that he could give him the Aliyah. But now he said Ba'is bevesi, so then even the Rabbanan are going to agree he cannot give him the Aliyah because he meant to say the best of the house that I have. And the bottom floor is not considered, is considered the bed. Then you have to give him the bottom floor. I had a problem, it's share my problem that I think even the Rabbanan, I'm just asking, the Gemara seems to says not like me, but I would have thought that even according to Rabbanan, they don't say that they call the Aliyah bias. They're just saying when you say bias, it includes the whole thing, a package deal. It includes the whole thing. When a person said, I make a net, I'm not going into the house means the whole house. It even includes the attic. But you don't see that Rabbanan say that the attic alone is going to be called bias. So when someone says, I'm selling you a bias, I would say the Rabbanan also don't say that it means the top. The Rabbanan just say that if you say house, it's the whole house includes the attic also. Not that the attic alone is going to be referred to as bias. So I would have thought Ula is good even according to Rabbanan. But the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara says according to Rabbanan, if you say bias, you could say, I sold you the bias, I sold you the top floor. New Gemara, somebody made a neder about benefiting from a bed. The word bed, I said the word bed, I don't know what I should say, but that's the subject over here. What if he says mita, what does he mean? What's included in the word mita? Muta b'dargesh, Rav Meir, machlokes, if it includes a dargesh, for our purposes, we might say like a couch. Does the word mita include a couch? So machlokes, that according to Rav Meir, when he says mita, he does not mean dargesh, it does not mean a couch, and according to the Chachamim, when he's mita does include a couch. Don't take me so literal.
Couch is something you can lie down on.
Yeah. Mita also can be something you sit on sometimes. Amita sometimes knows Gemara. Mita was used by eating. When you ate by the meal, they ate on a mita, some kind of reclining of some sort. But they can be used, both of them can be used for the same purpose. But what does the word mita mean? According to our mayor, it does not include a dargesh. According to our Rabbanan, it does.
In our days, I would say maybe you could say it depends on that house. Some houses they haven't when there's crowded and the guests when someone comes over, so one of the kids sleep on the couch.
Yeah, we're talking about what the word means. The issue is what the word means.
Yeah, but over here it means
it doesn't say sleeping.
It says referring to.
Right, what does the word mita mean?
Okay.
It could be people sleep on the couch, but they don't call it a bed. Maybe the question would be what the word.
I thought that it'd be in some of the houses, the bed would be considered the couch would be considered the bed because when it gets crowded, they sleep on the couch.
So when they make a netter on the bed, they're not going to be able to sit on the couch.
That's what I thought.
It could be. It could be as to what the word is. It could be how they use it. Maybe that affects how they use the word. But the criteria is going to be what the word means by them. Okay, good. How does it apply nowadays?
Yeah, this is.
What?
Is this a machlokas?
It sounds like it, yeah. And they see it before. The Gemara made a machlokas out of it. So how could there be a machlokas? What people mean? Go out and ask. So there must be something in between.
Okay.
That the machlokas, but then it comes out by mominus, by money. Then if there's some kind of a question about it, then it'll be you go with the robe, you don't go with the robe. Money is a different issue. It seems to be machlokas. I don't know how to explain it. Yes.
Okay.
But it's funny, when I came to the old city, so I asked one of the Zilman families, how many bedrooms do you have? He says a parent's room, the girl's room, and the boys sleep in the kitchen. So that was his third bedroom. So again, bedroom would be normal family.
Because they understood that you meant to ask where people sleep. They weren't asking.
He said the boys sleep in the kitchen. He didn't say that it was a bedroom.
No, he said 3 bedrooms.
Oh.
No, I didn't hear that. He said 3 bedrooms. I said, "There's the 3 bedrooms." He says the Nedarim, and the boys sleep here.
The head of a note.
So like that was his 3 bedrooms. So
He was just proving a point here.
How easy it is to.
He didn't consider
He
it a
was just,
bedroom.
telling
He
you
wanted
how.
to teach you how you act when else it.
Another than a dargish mutabamit. Everybody holds if you say dargish, you don't include a bed. I would say just to translate it. If he says couch, he surely doesn't mean bed. I'm just giving some kind of a loose example that maybe
It
what
seems
the
like it's
Mishnah means.
specific, more of a specific.
Specific,
term.
right. So
Is
what
it
I-
concerned,
right.
it included or not?
The same as before. When you say attic, you surely don't mean the house. But if you say house, maybe you mean the attic
Yeah,
also.
okay.
Here, if you say bed, maybe you mean the couch, machlokes. But if you say couch, you surely don't mean mita.
Uh-huh.
So I translated it as couch, but also the Gemara talks about what is a dargish. What is a dargish? Dargish is, I think, the translation of the word in the Targum under the word eres. Alo, so eres Brazil. So eres Brazil.
Ah.
Eres is also means a bed in the Torah or some kind of a. And okay, there's a word dargish. We want to figure out what the word dargish means. That's going to be the whole sugya. My dargish. That is the question. So maybe just highlight where we're going to get the answers. My dargish. That's the question. First answer. Ama'ula, Arsa de Gada. So the word God means mazel, how we call the word mazel. Some people say mazla tova, gad yoy, mazla tova, that there's a word gada. There's a pasuk that also talks about that God might be avodah zarah. There's a pasuk that says Orchim LaGod Shulchan. I always wondered if the word God comes from the word God, even though nowadays it doesn't. The word nowadays we use the word God for Elohim. We say the word God. So I wonder if it has some connection to this. That's where it came from. It means in the language, at least. Of course, when someone says God today, it doesn't mean any kind of mazel, and it doesn't mean avodah zarah. He might mean avodah zarah if his God is an avodah zarah, but the word God alone doesn't mean avodah zarah as it's used. But anyway,
And what's an arsa?
arsa means a bed, a mazel bed. What's a mazel bed? Doesn't sound very Jewish to have a mazel bed, but they had a mazel bed. So what does it mean? That it shouldn't be considered a good luck, a good fortune bed. So what is that? What's that all about? What, does that belong in the Jewish home? A mazel, good
Why
fortune?
not? Because we love mazel.
Okay,
Mazel's a good thing, isn't it? It's good
Mazel.
to have good mazel, even if we're above mazel.
okay, but he wants to draw
Is a
on
good
the.
luck charm a Jewish thing?
Oh, good luck charm.
That's his.
What is it doing? It's drawing.
No, kamea. We like kameas.
It's drawing some kind of a. I don't know. Welcome, shalom, welcome.
Can we pop in for 10 minutes?
Sure.
Yeah, you don't mind?
So we're trying to figure out what the word dargash means. There's a Mishnah that talks about the dargash when someone, and the whole issue in the Nedarim, someone prohibited himself on a certain thing, what's included under that term. So it had in the Mishnah the word dargash, which is Aramaic. We want to know what that includes. So there's going to be a few suggestions. The first one is Arsa de Gada, which means what we would call in our word a mazel. So a mazel bed, a good fortune bed. It's questionable. What does that mean?
Somehow it's a special bed.
Special bed. It's not used to sleep on. It's not used to sit on. And they want that the mazel should come onto the bed, that the house should have mazel, a good mazel.
Kisesha Eliyahu, something like that.
Kisesh Eliyahu is saying that if it says that Eliyahu Navi comes to the bris, so we want to honor him. I don't think he sits down on the chair. I don't think so.
We shouldn't either, or we do.
What do they do by the bris? The sandik sits on the Kisesh Eliyahu, or they make another.
The other kisei, which they put next to the kisei shalom is really kisei shalom.
So it's not so nice that they make.
Yeah, the sandik sits on a nice one.
A little chair. They bring a regular keter chair, and that's the Kisesh Eliyahu. And
A lot of times the big one says kisei.
yeah, and the Eliyahu comes, he sees the Kisesh Eliyahu, and then they put him on a regular keter chair. I don't know. But
So in our sense, maybe it's not for sleeping.
it's not for sleeping. It's not used to sleep on. It's made that there should be a bed that the muzzle should show. I don't know why it's Jewish. I use such a thing. A place where the muzzle should reside.
Okay, in the Chuvra, they sit on that nice chair.
Right.
But he says that
They put another chair there for
chair, and they said they called that the
That's
kisei.
right. And that the one that the big chair
The big
should
chair,
it should
the
say
nice chair.
Kisei Shel Sandak. They should erase Eliyahu Navi. And right, this is a Sandak's chair. It's not with Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu Navi to give a regular plain chair. Is that nice? You make Kisei Shel Eliyahu and then you give him a regular small chair.
But the sandik sits on the nice chair.
They want the Sandak to be high up in order that the mall can do his
Right.
so it's strange. They used to have two chairs. They used to have Kisei Shel Eliyahu and the
Right.
Kisei for the Sandak, but now they only make one. But they still have Kisei Shel Eliyahu,
There are places which have a double chair.
a double chair. That's the way it originally was. You don't have to make it. They make such a chair. They make Kisei Shel Eliyahu. It's very strange. Okay. Anyway, this is a mazel bed,
This is a mazel bed, and it's not made for sleeping.
right? And
It
that
is a bed.
yeah. The question is, when you say the word bed, do you mean that also? That's the terminology. When you say the word bed, do you include that also?
Yeah.
And the more doesn't discuss if it's mutter. The more doesn't seem to have a problem with this. I'm just making a footnote that it's a strange thing. What's a mazel bed doing in a nice Jewish home? So I don't know what the answer is, but it doesn't seem to be problematic. Halachically, it doesn't seem to be problematic. I don't know why. How can you say that dargish is a mazel bed? That's talking about a king when the king is in mourning and people are coming to bring the Suda Savrah. They bring the first meal to the mourner. So it says that usually the Avel sits on the ground. But the Kohen Gadol and the king, they have different status that they honor them even when they're in a Belos, even when they're in mourning, and those are on the floor. So when they bring the Suda Savrah, the first meal, to to the king.
To
The
serve.
Havra. The word
Yeah,
Havra means to give
Sudas.
give a meal. And there's a halacha that the first meal is given by the people to the mourner. So Kol Masuban Allah, everybody sits on the ground. The people sit on the ground, not the Avela. And the Ovel, who Mesav Allah Dargish, and the king sits on the Dargish. That's what it says, a Mishnah and Moed Kotan about Avelos. So how could you say that if the Dargish is just mazel bed, you're going to tell them to sit on the mazel bed? No one sits there. It's never sat on. It's not a chair for sitting. And then they're going to, but now that he's noble, they're going to make him to sit over there. So how could you say that's attacking Ula? The Gemara says no problem. There are such things that we're going to honor him even more than usual. What's the problem? Meat and wine. There's the kula shasa boy achli boy lo achil. Ahu yoma ananya vinale. The whole year, if he wants to eat meat and wine, he may. Doesn't want to, doesn't have to. And on the day of that is an ovel, we can bring it to the sabra. So we do give him, we encourage him to have meat and wine. So it's not a kasha that we do without an ovel, something we don't usually do. So even though usually you wouldn't sit on this mazel bed, this fortune bed, but maybe by the Avelos we do, maybe. So we're not yet knocking. Ula is the one who said that it means the Arsa de Gada, Ula, and the Gemara tried to knock him down, but we protected him. Ula is still holding his position that it means this fortune bed. El Kasha, a different kasha on Ula. The Tanya Dagish Laya Kofeu El Zokvo. There's a thing called Kriya Samita by Avelos by morning. Nowadays people don't do it. But they were originally, the Mishnah says that Abel, they're supposed to overturn all the beds in the house. They would mamish turn it upside down. And then it talks about where he's supposed to sleep. He sleeps on the overturned bed. But nowadays they don't do it. Different reasons. It says in the poskim Hakam that custom is not to do that anymore. But really the halacha was to overturn all the beds. And there it says Dargish, they didn't overturn. We still don't know what a Dargish, we're trying to figure out what a Dargish is. And if it means this fortune bed, why should you not turn it over? It says in the Brisa Dagish Lo Yikofei, well, Zokpo means you leave it standing. You leave it the way it is. If you say that this Dargish, translation of the word Dargish means this fortune bed, but Tanya, Kofes Mitasa, Lo Mitasa Bubadu, who Kofe, Ela Kolamita Shesh Lo Vasach Baisu Kofe. That's not only overturn his own bed, the mourner's own bed, but all the beds in the house he's overturned. So there's a fortune bed over there, so turn it over also. It must be that it's not a fortune bed. Hello, Kasha. But the Gemara also is going to protect, try to defend Ula, Amad Beis. You only have to overturn a bed which is designated for sleeping, for sitting, for sleeping. But if it's designated for something else, like some kind of a desk that they had a mita, they call it a mita also. Mita mechedes l'keila means that you put things on it. It wasn't made to sleep on; it was made to store things on, and that you don't have to turn over.
The kelim here would be before that you put kelim on.
You put kelim on it, right? It's not used. But the word mita probably just means any kind of board that has 4 legs is also called a mita. It's used as a desk or something like that. The Tanya Moisa table and Moisa mita mechedes l'kelim ain't zech lachvosa. If the bed was designated only for kelim, not for sleeping, so then you don't have to overturn it. So there's no kasha. We defended Ula that it still could be in a fortune bed and no problem that the king sits on it when they do a suda sabra, and it doesn't have to be overturned either because it's not made for sleeping. So
wait, if it's a fortune bed, does that mean that you put kelim on?
No, not that. It just means that if it's not made for sleeping, we find that other case that you don't have to overturn it. So it's not a kasha, you don't have to overturn it. So Ula is still standing. Ali kasha of kasha. This is going to be the knockout. The Tanya of Shimon Gamliel Omer Dargish Matir Kabita Vu Novel Meila. Rav Shimon Gamliel says the way to that he continues. He argues on Tanakama. Tanakama says you don't have to do anything to a Dargish. You leave it. You don't have to turn it over. Rav Shimon Gamliel says you do have to do something. Matir Kabita. You undo the hooks. That means that there's some kind of hooks. We don't know what that is yet, but you're supposed to undo the hooks, and then it falls out. And the Gemara says that this fortune bed doesn't have any hooks. The Dargish Arsa the Gada who karbitin miyisla, does it have karbitin? So we successfully knocked down Ula. Ula's shot can't be. He said Dargish means this fortune bed. Fortune bed doesn't have any. They knew what it was. It doesn't have hooks to undo. So we're still looking at now. We're starting to look for another terrace. What does Dargish mean? Ula said it means a fortune bed. We had 3 kashas. The first 2 kashas we answered. The third kasha we didn't answer. So he seems to be rejected. So now the Gemara is going to go on to the next possibility. And Kiyasa Rav and Omar, Shilte Lahumi Rabbanan. When Ravin came, Ravin was one of those who came back and forth from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. When he came to Bavel from Eretz Yisrael, he said, Shilte Lahumi Rabbanan. I asked a certain Talmud Chacham, Rav Tachlif Abama Rav Shmei. His name was Rav is Rav Tachlif Abama Rav. Davashchich Bashuka de Tzali. I think the ayin is a mistake. It means that he used to be regular in the market, in the leather market. The word shukah is a market. Sala we had before also means leather. What do we have that today? That the word means leather? Leather coat over there. We have something about kituna, the kitunta, aktonis of tzala. Tzala is leather. So he would be in the leather market. And he said, you know what a dargish is? My dargish, I said the tzala. Dargish means a leather bed. I think that nowadays we call it more or less a cot. I think that's the point, that when you say bed, I'm just saying again, not the exact translation, but before I said a couch, now the Gemara says has something to do with hooks, that you can undo some hooks over there. So here it seems to be a leather cot. A leather cot. I'm not sure. Again, the word arsa means a bed, sala means leather. So that was his shot. So the question was, when you say bed, do you mean this leather bed? And that's what the Mishnah said. Machlokes if bed includes that or not. But if he said it's, I said a dargash, you surely don't mean a regular bed. Itma ezel mito ve'ezel dargash. There's not a gersa that says itmar nami. A gersa that it says in Moed Katan. And this Gemara is brought down in 3 places. I just looked around because I had a difficulty over here. Is the Gemara now continuing with the same opinion, or is it going to be third opinion? So it has this Gemara over here, and also in Sanhedrin, also in Moed Katan. Each time it says it a little different. Here it says itmar. I don't know if it's starting a new mandama. Over there it says in one place it says itmar nami, and Moed Katan. And Sanhedrin it just says continues. Ezel mita. I'm not sure. So I'm questionable about the next Gemara. It says here, Ezel mita ve'ezel dargish. What's a bed? What's a dargish? What's a mita? What's a dargish? Amr Yemia was an Amora. Mita misaganos al gava. Dargish misaganos migupo. So I'll put it again as maybe a new third opinion. I don't know. We had one was misaganos migupo. So the word misagan means sirug means when you alternate. So when you want to make a bed, so you want it to be some kind of a something to hold up the mattress, or so you go back and forth. You'll crisscross back and forth, weaving some kind of a weave around the bed frame. You have a bed frame, the 4, whatever you have, legs, whatever, but you have a frame of 4, and you go back and forth to make. So we started talking about leather over here, maybe. If it's talking about leather,
We had that in another second.
Yeah.
Second Shabbos.
Show pictures.
Shabbos and Moed Katan, Moed Katan spoke about if you want to do that. And Matkin, right? Good. So here the question is, he says the difference between a mita and a dargish is that a mita, when you do the sirug, anybody has a word for that in English, when you do this kind of weave or alternating, so then you do it al gaba, over the frame, over the bed frame. Means the bed frame is going to be covered with strings or leather. Maybe the whole thing is a piece of leather, and you put the leather or whatever it means. Let's take the leather and you put it on top. But dargish that you'd have holes, let's say, in the bed frame.
In the frame.
Here it's over the frame, and here it's in the frame. Means probably have holes over there or something like that in order to connect it to the inside of the frame. Not that it doesn't wrap over the bed frame on top.
I would say that the hooks, but we just said that the dargish does not have hooks.
The dargish does have hooks. That was the whole problem. The dargish does have hooks.
Oh, perfect.
So you want to say that it has hooks, and it's a piece of leather,
It has
and
hooks and
that's called migufo. That's called migufo, and the bed, you wrap it around the bed frame. Is this the third terrace? We had a we have a fortune bed, and then we had a leather bed, and now we have that masaganoso migufo, and not on top of it. So it's just a continuation. It's the same thing as the second terrace, that it's a leather, but the leather is not wrapped on the top. It's fitting into the side of the bed
Nice
frame.
side.
On some beds, either they use wood, that just,
Yeah.
or they use metal. Whole thing is made out of metal things that crisscross. Right?
Hmm.
Don't you see some beds, the metal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, today now they use the wood.
Um,
It's just wood,
Flat.
flat.
Jewish agency used to give them that.
Oh, really?
That's right.
And used to make out, yeah,
The
40 years
metal
ago,
things,
30 years
yeah.
ago.
We
Everybody got
got 6 of them.
terrible.
Now the Gemara seems to be a side issue. If the Gemara is now going on the bed, it means the bed that it said Masaganoso al Gaba, we're leaving alone the dargish right now. The Gemara is a kasha. We're going to come back, but the dargish might mean.
So
But
we
the
still
Gemara-
calling the beds, is that the whole point? Are we trying to?
We want to know what a dargish is. That's the subject. The Mishnah spoke about if you say mita doesn't mean kuda dargish. That's what we're talking about. And machlokes. What is a dargish? First we tried a fortune bed. We knocked it down. Then we said a leather bed.
So we can.
No kashas on that. We don't have any kash on the one that said a leather bed. But here it did. Someone did. Rabbi Yirmiyah said that it's migufo, and the bed is al gava. Here the Gemara continues to have a kasha. I'm not sure if it's the third teretz or if it's together with the second teretz. We're still continuing that it means what did I do? Arsa the Gada. I should have also highlighted Arsa the Tzala. Where's that? Arsa the Tzala. My Dargish Arsa the Tzala. And then, which means leather. And then the Gemara continues 2 lines later that Misaganos Gufa. That's continuation, maybe. The Gemara's a kasha. How could you say that a bed? That this kasha is not on the Dargish, it's on the Mita. Here it says Mita Misaganos al Gaba. And there was a kasha on that. How could you say that by Mita you wrap the leather, let's say, over the bed frame? It says in Mishnah in
The VE is a
Kalim.
question, the VE,
Mesvei.
or Mexican, further back, two lines before that. Well, this is a question,
You have the word Mesvei?
yeah,
Mesvei. Kli eitz. Me'em Misam Kabbalah Tuma. From when is a wooden utensil susceptible to tumah, vulnerable to tumah? They mean that's already considered finished, a finished product. If it's unfinished product, a kli eitz which is not finished is not makabel tumah. So what's considered a finished product? Amita v'arisa b'shei shupim ba'oradak. They used to rub it with fish skin. What's the purpose of that? Maybe some kind of shellac. I'm imagining it maybe some kind of a shellac that makes that the water should be either a finishing touch or wood or waterproof. But then you have to rub it. Amita is a bed, arisa, it might be in a crate or whatever they like use nowadays. It's not our subject, but it says she is shufim ba'oradak. And the question is, if it's covered over with the leather, so there's no reason to make it nice or to make it protected. It's protected because it has the leather over it. So we're not asking on the dargish as much as we're asking on the mita. How could you say mita misaganos al gaba? Then there would be no purpose to rub it with fish skin. The mita mistareges al gaba, if the bed is the leather of the bed is put on top of the wood frame, lamalishi shifas or hadak. What do you have to make it finished? No finishing touches. What do you need finishing touches for? Nobody sees it anyway. That's correcting what we said about a mita. The mita was al gaba, but now that's being changed. Both of them, the mita and the dargish, both of them are from within the bed frame, not on top of the bed frame. Mita aule bafuki bebazini, dargish aule bafuki babakta. So here they talk about that the bed frame, it's all going to be within the bed frame, not over the bed frame. Even the bed is also, it's connected to within the bed frame, not over the bed frame. But there's 2 ways how to do it. What? Only means to go in, afuki means to go out. It goes in and out with bazini. Bazini is going to mean that you make holes. You make holes. You make holes in the bed frame, and you go in and out. That's going to be the weaving in and out of the bed frame through the holes in the bed frame. And that seems to be a better, maybe it's a better quality, it's a stronger. And the dargish, bakta is going to mean hooks, some kind of hooks that you attach to the inside of the bed frame, and then you take the string or the leather, whatever, and you're going to connect it to those hooks. So we found out what the difference between a bed and a dargish is. And what did our Mishnah say? Machloki, for some reason, it seems to be something very mahuti, something very substantial if it's different. When you say the word bed, you include that also.
Bed is sturdier.
More sturdy. So when you say bed, then it's like a cot of some sort. But
Yeah.
I think in our terms, we would say a bed and a cot. When you say bed, you include a cot, machlokis. If you say cot, you surely don't mean a bed. Amar Reb Yaakov bar Acha, Amar Rebbe, Mita Shenachni. This is some lachora side point. We can put in parentheses. I think it has nothing to do with us. It has to do with the halachas of Kfiyas Hamita. I'll put this in parentheses, I think. It doesn't have really to do with our subject of what a dargish is. Once we mentioned the halachas of Kfiyas Hamita, Amr Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha, Amr Rebbe, Mita Shenaklita Yosin. What if you have a bed that has a canopy? We had this in Masechah Sukkah. They had naklitin and kinofis.
Naklitin is a can.
Naklitin, the way it's made is that there's a kinofis, which the Gemara in Sukkah says it has four posts in all the 4 corners. You put a canopy around it, like a flat canopy. And naklitin will be that it will be a slanty canopy because they only have 2 poles and the head and the feet of the bed. You put in the middle of the bed, in the middle of the sideboards, not the sideboards on the side, but the end boards. So you put a pole by the headboard, in the middle of the headboard. You put a pole in the middle of the footboard, and you put a rod across, and then you put a canopy, and it falls down on both sides. So the question is, if you
question on Shabbos is that on Sukkot.
that's the sukkah over there. Could you sleep in such a canopy in the sukkah? So it shouldn't be an ohel that's mafsik. He's talking about how do you do kfiyas hamita? You're supposed to turn the bed upside down. You can't turn the bed upside down because it has a canopy. So it says mita shenachnites yotzin zok v'dayo. So here the Mepharshim say zok v'dayo does not mean that you just leave it the way it is, because then it wouldn't say, leave it as it is, then that's enough. The word vidayo doesn't make sense. Before we said by the dargish, leave it as is. It says zoko. Eino kofeyo ela zoko. Leave it as is. Zoko means straight up.
Straight up
Right. But here,
is enough. The dio is enough.
that's the way it talks. You want to say you don't have to do anything?
Yeah, why
and
do you
it's
say
enough.
straight it's enough?
Just say zoko. So they say here, zoko means you do stand it up. You don't turn it upside down, you stand it up. So this bed that has a canopy, stand it up on its side. Do stand it up on its side. Which side?
Put
Any
it
side.
sideways.
Put it sideways.
Nice.
So that's enough. You don't have to turn it upside down because it has a canopy sticking out. You can't turn it upside down. But put it on the side, that's good enough.
Why are we doing this? I didn't get the purpose of turning the beds over. Is it a superstitious?
Availus. Oh, why we do it?
Oh, is it by Availus you're talking about?
The Kriyas Hamith is by Availus. We were interested to know what a Dargish is as far as Hilchos Nedarim. So we fly around, cruise around any place where it says Dargish. That goes back to the Dargish, where I realize I should make the end point over here. This everything is the side point. We want to know what a Dargish is only. But this was another. I'm sorry, I made a mistake over there. Here's the Vidaya. Yeah, cross it out. And before you undo the place where the leather is connected to the bed frame and let it drop. So as far as we're concerned, you have to know what each term means. If you say mita, do you mean couch? You said bed, mita, bed, do you mean couch? If you say couch, do you mean bed? And that's the sugya of Gemara, and those times mita and dargish.
I'm sorry,
yes.
undo the leather for the dargish.
Right. That's if you look here on top, fourth line on top. And that was a continuation of the Brisa.
Yeah.
Yeah, on Amud Aleph, you had Tanakama said that the Dargish, like if you look four lines up on Amud Aleph and 4 lines down on Amud Beis. There it said Tanakama said Dargish lo yikofei well zokvo. Don't do anything, leave it the way it is. And Rav Shimon Gamliel on Amud Beis, he argued and he said, no, you have to undo the karbitim and it's going to fall. So he the pasuk likes. Here the pasuk like Rav Shimon Gamliel. We brought it all in order to figure out what a dargish is.
I see.
But now we came into the machlokas, say pasuk like Rav Shimon Gamliel. Nowadays, the minig is not to do kfiyas amita. The Oval doesn't do kfiyas amita. Very much changed Hilchos Avelos from the Gemara, Mishnah, and Gemara to what people do. And the reasons sometimes are understandable, sometimes not.
Today, you couldn't turn over the bed without breaking the whole bed.
Why?
With the headboards and everything.
If they're connected.
Well, you disconnect the head. You disconnect.
Maybe you disconnect the
Some
headboard.
of them are not.
But the mice people don't do kfiyas amita nowadays. Why not? Is a question.
You just separate the beds from your wife.
That's nothing to do. That's a
That's
different
not-
subject. That's a different subject.
But
That's nothing to do with kfiyas amita. That has to do. That's also the tashma amita. That
And then
Oval
they
is
would-
not supposed to have relations. But it's
And then they would sleep on it upside down.
they
Is
were
that
sleeping
it?
upside down. Right.
Just to
So-
show the.
The Gemara says over there because a person is telling Malokim, and the Gemara says the whole reason why they do kfiyas amita. Nowadays they don't do
Because
it.
a person is selling malakim.
Something to do with that.
Why would?
And
why
he
would somebody
died.
go
And he died. So turn over the bed. What does it mean?
there?
I
Oh,
don't
the
know.
person who died is selling.
Yeah, and therefore, since that Selam Malokim is missing, turn the bed upside down. Why? I don't know. There was
something like Inui or something.
maybe
Not
no,
sleeping
they're
very
supposed to
comfortable.
undo all the bed.
All beds in the house.
All the beds in the house are
All the
supposed to be
beds in the
overturned.
house.
It's not because he's going to sleep comfortably. It has to do with sleeping.
All the beds.
All the beds are supposed to be overturned.
Oh, like covering all the mirrors. or
And there's no such thing about covering the mirrors. That's
Huh? There's
there's
no such thing?
no such halacha. Where does it
something.
come
You
from?
shouldn't see your-
Why shouldn't you see it?
Because you'll be so sad to look at yourself. I don't know.
Some say because some do say the custom comes because Selam Malokim. That a person is Selam
But it's just a
Malokim.
custom.
Yeah. It doesn't say anything about covering the mirrors
Who the
There's no,
in the customary books. It doesn't.
customer books doesn't say anything.
I mean, nothing. There's no such halacha. People do it. Why? Maybe because they're davening over there, and then people have mirrors. They cover the mirrors. That people shouldn't see themselves when they're davening. I'm saying there's no real halacha about covering the mirrors on the base level. That's the custom. I'm not saying no one should be another. I'm not saying to go against the custom, but there's no real such halacha. But there is halacha to cover. There is halacha to overturn the beds. Nobody does.
Nobody does.
I know them in our ear. Next subject. If someone said a neder about not benefiting from the city, what does the city mean? Know them in our ear. mutter likonas l'tchuma shaliyah, v'asur likonas li'ibura. So there's sometimes that you might think that 2,000 amos of the city is still bottled to the city. Oh, wait, overtime already?
Yeah.
Should we stop here?
Yeah.
Okay. Simple.
You can go catch them.
To enter into the 2,000 amos before the city.
We'll do it tomorrow. We